What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, there are ancient cities sleeping beneath the ocean, waves waiting to reveal truths that could shatter everything we think we know about human history? What if the legends your grandmother whispered about creatures in the dark, about lost civilizations, with knowledge beyond our comprehension, about doorways to other worlds? What if they weren't just stories meant to frighten children into good behavior? Picture this. In 2011, just days before one of the most devastating earthquakes in Japanese history, fishermen along the coast began pulling strange serpentine creatures from their nets. Silver ribbons of flesh, some stretching over 20 feet long, with crimson crowns that seemed to glow in the dying light. The oarfish messengers from the deep had risen from their eternal darkness to deliver a warning that modern science still struggles to explain. The elders knew. They had always known. These were the Dragon King's messengers, and their appearance meant the earth itself was about to convulse in agony. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. This wasn't superstition. This wasn't coincidence. In the weeks following these sightings, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake triggered a tsunami that killed nearly 20,000 people. The ancient folklore had predicted what our most sophisticated instruments had missed. And this is just one thread in a tapestry of mysteries that spans continents, cultures, and millennia. Consider the Dogon people of Mali, an isolated tribe who have possessed detailed knowledge about a star system invisible to the naked eye since at least the 13th century. They knew that Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky, had a companion star. They knew its orbital period. They knew its density. They described it as small, incredibly heavy, and white. Modern astronomy didn't discover Sirius B, a white dwarf star, matching their exact description until 1862. And even then it required advanced telescopes that the Dogon people had never seen, let alone possessed. How did they know? When anthropologists asked this question, the Dogon elders spoke of teachers who came from the sky beings they called the Nommo, who arrived in vessels that thundered and threw fire. Beings who were neither fully human nor fully fish, but something in between. Beings who taught them not just about the stars, but about the very nature of matter itself, about particles smaller than the eye could see, about the spiral structure of the galaxy we live in. These aren't isolated incidents. These aren't random anomalies. Across the globe, from the mist-shrouded hills of Ireland to the depths of the Amazon rainforest, from the volcanic islands of Indonesia to the frozen peaks of the Andes, we find the same pattern repeating itself over and over again. Ancient knowledge that shouldn't exist, structures that defy explanation, prophecies that prove unnervingly accurate, technologies that predate their supposed invention by centuries or even millennia. In Romania, there's a forest where compasses spin wildly, where electronic devices fail without explanation, where people enter for minutes and emerge hours later with no memory of the lost time. The locals call it Hoia Baciu, and they won't enter it after dark. Not because of what they might see, but because of what might see them. Scientists have recorded electromagnetic anomalies there that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics. Photographers have captured lights in the sky that move in ways that violate everything we know about aerodynamics. And sometimes, just sometimes, the forest takes people and never gives them back. These mysteries aren't confined to remote locations or ancient times. They're happening right now all around us, hidden in plain sight. In 2024, archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar in Guatemala discovered that what we thought were hills covered in jungle vegetation were actually massive pyramids, part of a Maya metropolis that housed over 100,000 people. An entire civilization complete with highways, aqueducts, and urban planning that rivals modern cities had been invisible to us for centuries, hiding beneath a thin veil of earth and trees. What else are we missing? What other truths are buried just beneath the surface of our everyday reality? Today, we're going to journey together through 15 of the most profound mysteries that challenge everything we think we know about our past, our present, and possibly our future. These aren't just ghost stories or urban legends. These are documented cases with archaeological evidence, historical records, and in some cases, multiple credible witnesses. These are the mysteries that keep archaeologists awake at night, that make historians question their textbooks, that force scientists to add more and more qualifiers to their theories. From lost civilizations that possessed technologies we're only now rediscovering, to ancient knowledge that seems to have been downloaded rather than developed, to phenomena that suggest our ancestors were in contact with something far beyond their supposedly primitive understanding of the world. Each mystery we explore today is a piece of a larger puzzle, and when you start to see how they connect, how they echo each other across vast distances and enormous spans of time, you'll begin to understand that human history is far stranger, far more complex, and far more mysterious than we've ever been taught. So buckle up, keep an open mind, and prepare to question everything. Because by the end of this journey, you'll never look at the world the same way again. But before we dive into these incredible mysteries, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we uncover, and I guarantee you'll be thinking about these stories long after this video ends. The truth, as they say, is out there. But sometimes it's also beneath us, above us, and all around us, waiting for someone brave enough to look. Throughout human history, we've stood at the edge of the unknown, peering into the darkness, with a mixture of fear and fascination. Every civilization, from the ancient Sumerians etching their observations onto clay tablets to modern scientists launching probes into the depths of space, has grappled with the same fundamental questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? And perhaps most unsettling of all, are we alone? The boundaries between science, spirituality, and mythology have never been as clear-cut as we like to pretend. What one generation dismisses as superstition, the next often validates through rigorous research. Consider that just 200 years ago, the idea of invisible waves carrying voices across vast distances would have been considered pure magic. Today, you're probably listening to this on a device that would have gotten you burned as a witch in medieval times. This blurring of boundaries isn't a modern phenomenon. It's been happening since humans first looked up at the stars and wondered. The ancient Greeks had their oracle at Delphi, where priestesses would inhale volcanic vapors and deliver prophecies that shaped the course of empires. For centuries, historians dismissed these accounts as religious theater primitive people, deluding themselves with mysticism. Then, in 2001, a team of geologists discovered that the temple sat directly above a geological fault line that released ethylene gas, a sweet-smelling vapor that in small doses produces a floating euphoric sensation remarkably similar to the trance states described in ancient texts. The oracle wasn't fake. She was literally high on naturally occurring geological phenomena, accessing altered states of consciousness that may have allowed her to tap into something beyond ordinary perception. This pattern repeats itself throughout history. The Baghdad battery, discovered in 1938, is a clay jar from 250 BCE that, when filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, generates approximately 1 volt of electricity. Mainstream archaeology still debates its purpose, suggesting it might have been used for electroplating gold onto silver objects. But the very existence of this device forces us to reconsider what ancient peoples knew about the fundamental forces of nature. Similarly, the Antikythera mechanism, pulled from a shipwreck off the Greek coast in 1901, is an ancient analog computer from around 100 BCE. Its complexity wasn't matched again until astronomical clocks appeared in medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. This device could predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance, calculate the irregular orbit of the moon, and even account for leap years. It's a level of mechanical sophistication that simply shouldn't have existed in the ancient world according to our linear model of technological progress. But perhaps the most profound shift in our understanding comes from the relatively new field of archaeoastronomy, which studies how ancient peoples understood celestial phenomena. Site after site, from Stonehenge to the pyramids of Giza, from Angkor Wat to Chichen Itza, reveals architectural alignments so precise that they could only have been achieved through centuries of careful observation and sophisticated mathematical calculation. These weren't primitive peoples cowering in fear at eclipses. They were predicting them, planning for them, and incorporating them into their religious and civic calendars with a precision that rivals modern astronomy. The implications are staggering. If ancient peoples possessed such advanced knowledge, how did they acquire it? The conventional explanation that it developed slowly through trial and error over millennia becomes harder to defend when we find the same advanced concepts appearing simultaneously in civilizations that had no contact with each other. The Maya in Central America, the Dogon in Africa, the Aboriginal Australians, and the ancient Indians all possessed remarkably similar knowledge about astronomical cycles, the precession of the equinoxes, and even the existence of celestial bodies invisible to the naked eye. This brings us to what researchers call the knowledge paradox of ancient civilizations. How do we explain the presence of advanced concepts in cultures that, according to our understanding, shouldn't have had the tools or methodologies to discover them? Some argue for a lost global civilization that predated known history, something like Atlantis, but based on geological and archaeological evidence rather than Platonic philosophy. Others suggest that ancient peoples had ways of perceiving reality that we've lost in our rush toward materialism and technology. The psychiatrist Carl Jung proposed the concept of the collective unconscious, a shared psychic space where all human minds connect at a fundamental level. Could ancient peoples have been more attuned to this collective wisdom? Modern studies on consciousness, particularly those involving psychedelics and meditation, suggest that altered states can indeed provide access to information that seems to come from beyond the individual mind. The CIA's own declassified documents from Project Stargate reveal that the U.S. government spent millions of dollars researching remote viewing and other psychic phenomena, with results that were inconclusive but intriguing enough to warrant decades of continued funding. Meanwhile, quantum physics has revealed a universe far stranger than our ancestors could have imagined, yet paradoxically more in line with ancient mystical traditions than with classical Newtonian mechanics. Quantum entanglement shows us that particles can be connected across vast distances, instantly affecting each other in ways that Einstein himself called spooky action at a distance. The observer effect demonstrates that consciousness itself plays a role in determining physical reality at the quantum level. Suddenly, ancient ideas about the interconnectedness of all things and the power of consciousness to shape reality don't seem quite so primitive. This convergence of cutting-edge science with ancient wisdom has created a new paradigm for understanding mysteries. We're no longer quick to dismiss folklore as mere superstition. When the Andaman Islanders fled to high ground before the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, following oral traditions about the sea receding and the earth shaking, they survived while modern tourists who ignored the warning signs perished. Their primitive knowledge passed down through countless generations proved more valuable than our technology. Today's archaeologists and anthropologists approach ancient mysteries with a humility that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. They've learned that legends often preserve historical truths wrapped in metaphor and symbolism, but accurate in their essential details. The Viking sagas that spoke of a land of ice and fire to the west were validated when Norse settlements were discovered in Newfoundland. The Aboriginal Australian stories about a time when the sea level was lower and people could walk to Tasmania have been confirmed by geological evidence showing that such conditions existed over 10,000 years ago. We stand now at a unique moment in human history. Our technology has given us tools to peer deeper into the past than ever before. Satellite imagery reveals lost cities beneath dense jungle canopies. DNA analysis tells us stories of human migration and interbreeding that rewrite our family tree. Underwater archaeology opens up entirely new frontiers as we realize that coastlines from the last ice age, where early humans would have naturally settled, are now hundreds of feet beneath the waves. Yet for all our technological prowess, we're also recognizing the limits of our knowledge. Dark matter and dark energy make up 95% of the universe, and we have no idea what they are. We've mapped the human genome, but still don't understand consciousness. We can split atoms, but can't explain why ancient monuments around the world share such similar construction techniques and astronomical alignments. This is the context in which we must approach the mysteries we're about to explore, not with the arrogance of thinking we have all the answers, but with the excitement of knowing that we're still just beginning to ask the right questions. Each mystery is a doorway, an invitation to expand our understanding of what's possible. And sometimes, just sometimes, when we walk through those doorways, we discover that the universe is far more magical than we ever dared to imagine. Lost civilizations. Imagine standing on the western coast of India as the sun sets over the Arabian Sea, painting the waters gold and crimson. Now, imagine that beneath those waves, exactly where ancient Hindu texts said it would be, lies an entire city of gold and crystal, a metropolis that was supposedly nothing more than mythology, until divers started bringing up carved stone pillars and perfectly fitted granite blocks from the ocean floor. The city of Dwarka, according to the Mahabharata and other Hindu epics, was built by Lord Krishna himself over 5,000 years ago. The texts describe it in extraordinary detail, a planned city with 6 well-organized sectors, wide roads, plazas, palaces of gold and silver, and a harbor that could accommodate hundreds of ships. The descriptions are so precise that they include the exact number of palaces, 900,000, and specify that the city was built on land reclaimed from the sea, protected by massive walls and connected to the mainland by bridges. For centuries, Western scholars dismissed these accounts as pure mythology, elaborate fiction created to glorify ancient rulers. The descriptions seemed too fantastic, too precise, too impossible. A city of gold beneath the sea divine architecture that sparkled with gems. It read like fantasy, not history. But then something extraordinary happened. In 1988, marine archaeologists led by Dr. S.R. Rao began exploring the waters off the coast of modern Dwarka. What they found sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. At depths ranging from 3 to 40 meters, they discovered the remains of a well-planned city. Massive stone structures, some as large as swimming pools, lay scattered across the seabed. Stone anchors, identical to those described in ancient texts, were recovered. Most remarkably, the layout of the underwater ruins matched the city plan described in the Sanskrit epics with uncanny accuracy. Carbon dating of artifacts recovered from the site suggested that some structures could be 9,000 years old, which would make Dwarka one of the oldest known civilizations on Earth, predating the Indus Valley civilization by several millennia. The implications are staggering. If these dates are accurate, it means that advanced urban planning and monumental architecture existed at a time when, according to conventional history, humans were just beginning to develop agriculture. The underwater excavations revealed something even more intriguing. The city appears to have been submerged not gradually but suddenly, consistent with the descriptions in ancient texts that speak of Dwarka being swallowed by the sea in a single day and night after Krishna's death. Geological evidence suggests that this area has experienced several catastrophic submergence events due to tectonic activity, the most recent around 1500 BCE, which aligns remarkably well with the traditional dating of Krishna's era. But here's where the mystery deepens. The construction techniques observed in the underwater ruins demonstrate a level of sophistication that challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities. The stone blocks are fitted together without mortar, yet they've maintained their structural integrity despite millennia of underwater currents and seismic activity. Some blocks show evidence of what appears to be machine tooling, with precise right angles and smooth surfaces that would be difficult to achieve with Bronze Age tools. Different researchers have proposed various theories. Some suggest that Dwarka represents a lost chapter in human civilization, evidence of an advanced culture that developed independently before being destroyed by natural catastrophe. Others argue that the ruins might be from multiple periods with later construction built upon earlier foundations, creating an archaeological palimpsest that spans millennia. A few brave souls have even suggested that the descriptions of Krishna's divine powers and advanced technology in the ancient texts might be cultural memories of a technologically sophisticated civilization that seemed godlike to later, less advanced peoples. The significance of Dwarka extends far beyond Hindu mythology or Indian history. If validated, it would force us to completely reconsider the timeline of human civilization. It would suggest that advanced urban societies existed during what we consider the Neolithic period, that sophisticated engineering and architectural knowledge developed far earlier than believed, and that catastrophic sea level changes have erased entire chapters of human history. What questions does this raise for our understanding of the past? If Dwarka is real, how many other mythological cities might be waiting beneath the waves, Percy Fawcett and the lost city of Z? In April 1925, a British explorer named Percy Harrison Fawcett sent one final telegram to his wife before disappearing into the green hell of the Amazon rainforest. His message was brief but confident. He was on the verge, he claimed, of discovering the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century, a lost civilization he called the City of Z. Fawcett, his son Jack, and their companion Raleigh Rimmel then vanished without a trace, becoming themselves one of the greatest mysteries of exploration. Fawcett wasn't some amateur treasure hunter driven by greed or fame. He was a seasoned explorer, a member of the Royal Geographical Society, a man who had already mapped vast swathes of the Amazon basin and survived encounters that would have killed lesser men. He'd been bitten by poisonous snakes, attacked by hostile tribes, and ravaged by tropical diseases, yet he always returned. His obsession with Z was built not on fantasy, but on years of careful research, including a document he'd found in the National Library of Rio de Janeiro, labeled Manuscript 5/12. This manuscript, written by Portuguese bandeirantes in 1753, described a magnificent stone city deep in the Brazilian interior, with multi-storied buildings, soaring arches, and a statue of a youth pointing northward. The Portuguese explorers reported hieroglyphic-like inscriptions that resembled neither indigenous writing nor any known European script. Fawcett cross-referenced this account with indigenous legends of a great civilization in the Amazon, stories of white-skinned, blue-eyed people who built stone cities before mysteriously vanishing. For years, Fawcett's disappearance only deepened the mystery. Over 100 expeditions have tried to find him or his lost city, and many of these would-be rescuers also vanished. Some returned with disturbing stories. Indigenous tribes spoke of a white man who had lived among them, who had chosen to stay in the forest, who had found something that made him never want to leave. Others brought back artifacts, a nameplate that might have been from Fawcett's trunk bones, that might have been his stories, that might have been true. But here's the truly extraordinary part. In recent decades, new technologies have revealed that Fawcett might have been right all along. Satellite imagery and LiDAR scanning have uncovered massive earthworks across the Amazon basin, geometric patterns that stretch for miles, raised roads and settlement mounds that suggest a vast interconnected civilization once thrived where we see only jungle today. The work of researchers like Michael Heckenberger has revealed that the upper Xingu region where Fawcett believed Z was located was indeed home to a complex pre-Columbian civilization, with urban centers connected by road networks supporting populations in the tens of thousands. These discoveries align disturbingly well with Fawcett's theories. He believed that the Amazon had hosted an advanced civilization that was decimated by European diseases in the 16th century, leaving only traces that were quickly swallowed by the jungle. Modern soil analysis has revealed terra preta, or Amazonian dark earth, a human-modified soil of extraordinary fertility that could only have been created through sophisticated agricultural techniques. This soil is found across vast areas of the Amazon, suggesting large-scale cultivation and dense populations, exactly where Fawcett predicted. Various theories attempt to explain what happened to Fawcett. The conventional view is that he was killed by indigenous tribes, disease or starvation. But some indigenous oral traditions tell a different story. The Kalapalo tribe claims that Fawcett stayed with them for a time before venturing deeper into the jungle, following their directions to a place where the Old Ones had lived. They say he found what he was looking for, but chose never to return, becoming something between legend and guardian spirit in their cultural memory. The mystery of City Z represents something profound about human ambition and the limits of knowledge. Fawcett was dismissed as a dreamer, his theories ridiculed by mainstream archaeology for decades. Yet modern discoveries suggest he was essentially correct about pre-Columbian Amazonian civilization. The jungle he died trying to explore has yielded secrets that validate his core beliefs, even if we'll never know whether he found his specific city. What does it mean when a mystery solves itself in ways the seeker never lived to see? The garden cities of the Amazon, deep in the rainforest of Ecuador, where the canopy is so thick that noon feels like twilight. Archaeologists have uncovered something that shouldn't exist according to our traditional understanding of the Amazon. Not just settlements or villages, but entire cities complete with pyramids, plazas, and sophisticated road networks, all dating back more than 2,000 years. These aren't the primitive huts of hunter-gatherers, but complex urban centers that rival anything built in Europe at the same time. The discovery began with strange mounds that locals had always known about, but that scientists had dismissed as natural formations. When researchers finally investigated using LiDAR technology, firing laser pulses through the forest canopy to map the ground below, they revealed an interconnected network of 15 urban centers spread across more than 1,000 square miles in the Upano Valley. The largest of these cities contained an estimated 10,000 residents, with monumental platforms up to 40 feet high and 400 feet long. What makes these garden cities truly remarkable is how they challenge our fundamental assumptions about the Amazon. We've been taught that the rainforest soil is too poor to support large-scale agriculture, that the environment is too hostile for urban development, that pre-Columbian Amazonian peoples were nomadic or lived in small villages. These cities prove all of that wrong. The inhabitants of these cities practiced what researchers call forest urbanism, a sophisticated blend of city planning and forest management that created a sustainable metropolis within the jungle ecosystem. They built raised fields for agriculture, channeling water through complex irrigation systems. They created roads up to 30 feet wide, raised above the flood level, and perfectly straight, running for miles through the forest. Some of these roads were built at angles that align with astronomical events, suggesting they served ceremonial as well as practical purposes. Carbon dating and soil analysis reveal that these cities thrived for over 1,000 years, from roughly 500 BCE to 600 CE. Then, mysteriously, they were abandoned. The populations vanished, the cities emptied, and the jungle reclaimed everything so thoroughly that even local indigenous peoples forgot these places had ever existed. Only their subtle modifications to the forest itself remained patches of terra preta and unusual concentrations of useful plants that marked where gardens and orchards once grew. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond archaeology. They suggest that the Amazon rainforest, which we think of as pristine wilderness, is actually a cultivated landscape, a massive garden abandoned by its gardeners. Studies of forest composition show that many of the tree species we consider wild are found in suspiciously high concentrations near archaeological sites, suggesting they were deliberately planted and cultivated. The untouched Amazon may be more accurately described as a post-apocalyptic landscape slowly rewilding after the collapse of the civilizations that once managed it. Different theories compete to explain the abandonment. climate change around 600 CE might have disrupted the delicate balance these cities maintained with their environment. Volcanic eruptions in the Andes could have poisoned the air and soil. European diseases might have reached the Amazon earlier than we thought, spreading along trade networks decades before conquistadors arrived. Or perhaps these cities faced the same mysterious fate that befell so many other pre-Columbian civilizations, a combination of environmental, social, and spiritual factors that we don't yet understand. The discovery has revolutionized our understanding of pre-Columbian America and forced archaeologists to reconsider sites they'd previously dismissed. How many other cities lie hidden beneath the world's jungles? How many civilizations have we overlooked because they didn't build in stone or clear-cut their forests? If entire cities can disappear so completely that even cultural memory forgets them, what else have we forgotten about our past? These lost civilizations share haunting commonalities that challenge our linear narrative of human progress. Each represents a sophisticated society that achieved remarkable feats of engineering and urban planning, only to vanish so completely that their very existence became legend. Dwarka, beneath the waves, City Zed in the green embrace of the jungle, and the garden cities of the Amazon all demonstrate that advanced human civilizations have risen and fallen in cycles we're only beginning to understand. Perhaps most unsettling is the recurring pattern of sudden abandonment or catastrophic destruction. These weren't gradual declines, but often rapid collapses that left entire cities empty within a generation. The causes remain mysterious: natural disasters, climate change, disease, social collapse, or perhaps factors we haven't yet considered. But the pattern suggests that civilization itself is far more fragile than we like to admit, that our cities and achievements could vanish as thoroughly as theirs did. What if human history isn't a steady climb toward progress, but a series of peaks and valleys with heights of achievement, followed by catastrophic losses of knowledge and capability? And if that's true, what does it mean for our own civilization, perched as we are on our own peak of technological achievement? Are we building something permanent, or are we just another lost city waiting to happen? Knowledge beyond time, the Dogon, mystery of Sirius. In the scorching heart of Mali, where the Sahara Desert meets the Sahel, lives a people whose knowledge of the cosmos has shattered scientific assumptions about what ancient civilizations could possibly know. The Dogon, a tribe of barely 400,000 people living in mud-brick villages along the Bandiagara cliffs, possess astronomical knowledge so precise, so impossible that it has sparked debates ranging from ancient aliens to lost civilizations to the limits of human consciousness itself. The controversy began in the 1930s when French anthropologists Marcel Griaule and Germaine Dieterlen spent decades living with the Dogon, gradually earning the trust of their priests and elders. What these anthropologists discovered and published in 1950 sent shockwaves through both the anthropological and astronomical communities. The Dogon didn't just know about Sirius, the brightest star in our sky. They knew things about it that should have been absolutely impossible for them to know. According to Dogon tradition, which their priests claim stretches back at least 700 years, Sirius has a companion star. They call it Po-Tolo, after their smallest grain of seed. They say this star is invisible to the eye, but immensely heavy, made of a material denser than anything on Earth. They claim it orbits Sirius every 50 years and rotates on its axis. They describe it as white in color and say it's the heaviest thing in the universe, so heavy that all earthly beings combined cannot lift it. Here's the mind-bending part. Every single detail of their description is accurate. Sirius B, discovered by Western astronomy in 1862 and only photographed in 1970, is indeed a white dwarf star. It's invisible to the naked eye. It's incredibly dense. A teaspoon of its material would weigh about 5 tons on Earth. Its orbital period is 50.1 years. It does rotate on its axis. The Dogon were describing with perfect accuracy an object that requires a powerful telescope to see and advanced astrophysics to understand. But the Dogon's astronomical knowledge doesn't stop there. They describe a third star in the Sirius system, which they call Emeya, and claim it has planets orbiting it. While this hasn't been confirmed, some astronomers have detected gravitational perturbations, suggesting a third body might exist in the system. The Dogon also knew that Jupiter has 4 major moons, that Saturn has rings that planets orbit the Sun, and that the Milky Way is a spiral galaxy containing billions of stars. They speak of the universe being infinite and populated with other worlds containing living beings. When asked how they acquired this knowledge, the Dogon give an answer that makes the mystery even deeper. They claim their ancestors were taught by the Namo amphibious beings who came from the Sirius system in a vessel that made a spinning, thunderous descent to Earth. The Nomo, they say, gave them this knowledge along with the arts of civilization, agriculture, weaving, and the fundamental moral codes that govern their society. These beings, described as half-human and half-fish, required water to survive and created a reservoir to live in while teaching the Dogon's ancestors. Skeptics have proposed various explanations. Some argue that the Dogon must have had contact with European astronomers who mentioned Sirius B after its discovery. But this theory faces serious problems. The anthropologists who first documented this knowledge in the 1930s found it already deeply embedded in Dogon rituals and mythology, expressed through ancient masks, ceremonies, and sand drawings that would have taken generations to develop. The knowledge wasn't superficial, it was woven into the very fabric of their culture. Others suggest that the Dogon might have had advanced telescopes in the past now lost. But there's no archaeological evidence for this, and the Dogon's knowledge includes information about Sirius B's density and composition that can't be determined through visual observation alone. Some researchers have proposed that the Dogon possessed ancient Egyptian knowledge, as there are cultural connections between the two civilizations, and the Egyptians did show unusual interest in Sirius. But Egyptian texts show no awareness of Sirius B. The most intriguing theory comes from researchers who study consciousness and non-ordinary states of awareness. They note that the Dogon priests undergo extensive initiation rituals involving sensory deprivation, fasting, and the consumption of psychoactive plants. Could these practices allow access to information through non-conventional means? Laboratory studies of remote viewing and altered states of consciousness have produced results that, while controversial, suggest human consciousness might be capable of accessing information beyond the limits of our physical senses. The Dogon mystery represents something profound about the nature of knowledge itself. If their astronomical information is genuine, and the evidence strongly suggests it is, then we must consider possibilities that challenge our fundamental assumptions about how knowledge is acquired and transmitted. What if consciousness can access information directly from the universe itself? Or what if human history includes chapters we've completely forgotten, times when we possessed capabilities we've since lost? The Roman fish brain phenomenon. Picture a lavish banquet in ancient Rome, circa 200 CE. Wealthy patricians recline on silk cushions, surrounded by marble statues and fountains of wine. The feast includes delicacies from across the empire, roasted peacock dormice dipped in honey flamingo tongues. But tonight's special attraction isn't just exotic, it's psychedelic. The servants bring out plates of carefully prepared fish brains, specifically from the Sarpa salpa, known as the dreamfish. What happens next would be illegal in most countries today. Historical accounts from Pliny the Elder and other Roman writers describe what followed the consumption of these fish brains: vivid hallucinations, out-of-body experiences, conversations with gods and deceased ancestors, visions of other worlds. Some participants reported experiencing prophetic dreams that predicted future events with uncanny accuracy. Others described traveling through time, witnessing the rise and fall of empires, seeing Rome's future glory and eventual decline. These weren't accidental poisonings, but deliberate ritual practices, especially among certain mystery cults and religious ceremonies. The dreamfish contains compounds called indole alkaloids, similar to DMT, one of the most powerful psychedelic substances known to science. But here's what makes this fascinating. The Romans didn't just stumble upon this accidentally. They had developed precise preparation methods, specific dosages, and ritual frameworks for using these substances safely and purposefully. They knew which parts of the fish to use, how to prepare them, and how to guide the resulting experiences toward specific outcomes. Roman texts describe elaborate ceremonies where priests would consume dreamfish preparations before delivering prophecies or conducting healing rituals. The oracle at Baiae, less famous than Delphi but equally influential, reportedly used dreamfish, among other substances, to induce prophetic states. Military commanders sometimes consulted these fish brain oracles before major battles, and there are accounts of seemingly impossible victories following their guidance. Modern science has confirmed that Sarpa salpa does indeed contain psychoactive compounds, and there have been documented cases of accidental hallucinogenic experiences from eating these fish in the Mediterranean. In 2006, 2 men in southern France experienced terrifying hallucinations after eating dreamfish, with effects lasting up to 36 hours. But what science hasn't explained is how the Romans could use these substances with such apparent precision and purpose. Archaeological evidence supports the widespread use of psychoactive substances in Roman religious practices. Excavations at Pompeii have revealed specialized rooms in certain houses that appear designed for altered state experiences, with specific architectural features meant to enhance sensory effects. Murals depicting mythological scenes show figures with dilated pupils and expressions suggesting altered consciousness. Chemical analysis of residues and ceremonial vessels has found traces of various psychoactive plants and preparations. The Romans weren't alone in this practice. Throughout the ancient world, from the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece to the Soma rituals of India, psychoactive substances were used to access what people believed were higher realms of knowledge and consciousness. The consistency of experiences across cultures, the recurring themes of entity contact, prophetic visions, and access to impossible knowledge raises profound questions about the nature of these experiences. Contemporary research into psychedelics has revealed that these substances can indeed produce experiences of profound insight and apparent access to information beyond the individual's normal knowledge. Studies at Johns Hopkins, Imperial College London, and other institutions have documented cases where participants report receiving complex information they couldn't have known, though science struggles to explain how. Different theories attempt to explain the Roman fish brain phenomenon. The conventional view dismisses it as mere hallucination, random neural firing, creating illusions of meaning. But this doesn't explain the consistent reports of accurate prophecies or the sophisticated preparation methods that seem to produce specific desired effects. Some researchers suggest these substances might enhance pattern recognition and intuition to an extraordinary degree, allowing users to make predictions that seem supernatural but are actually based on subtle cues processed below conscious awareness. The practice disappeared with the rise of Christianity and its suppression of pagan rituals. The knowledge of preparation methods, dosages, and ceremonial frameworks was lost, leaving only tantalizing hints in historical texts. Modern attempts to recreate these experiences have been hampered by legal restrictions and the loss of the cultural context that made them meaningful. What knowledge did the Romans access through their fish brain rituals? What insights into consciousness, reality, and the nature of time did they glimpse before this practice was condemned and forgotten? The Maya calendar. Precision. In the steaming jungles of Guatemala, hidden beneath centuries of vegetation and soil, archaeologists recently uncovered fragments of the oldest known Maya calendar. Dating to roughly 250 BCE, these painted murals don't just mark dates, they demonstrate an understanding of time astronomy and mathematics that seems impossible for their era. The precision of their calculations, the complexity of their system, and the accuracy of their predictions challenge everything we thought we knew about how scientific knowledge develops. The Maya didn't have just one calendar. They had multiple interlocking systems that tracked different cycles with extraordinary precision. Their sacred calendar, the Tzolk'in, consisted of 260 days. Their solar calendar, the Heb, contained 365 days. These two calendars meshed together like gears to create the calendar round a 52-year cycle. But beyond this was their long count calendar, which could track dates millions of years into the past and future with perfect accuracy. What's truly staggering is the precision of their astronomical observations. The Maya calculated the length of the solar year as 365.2420 days. The modern measurement is 365.2422 days. Their calculation was off by just 0.0002 days, or about 17 seconds per year. This is more accurate than the Julian calendar used in Europe at the same time, which was off by 11 minutes per year. They achieved this precision without telescopes, without mechanical clocks, without any of the instruments we consider essential for astronomical observation. The Maya also tracked the cycles of Venus with incredible accuracy. They calculated that Venus completes 5 synodic periods in 8 Earth years, a ratio they expressed as 2,920 days. The actual period is 2,921.76 days. They were off by less than 2 hours over 8 years. Their observations of lunar cycles were equally precise, predicting eclipses centuries in advance with stunning accuracy. But here's where it gets truly mysterious. The Maya long count calendar begins on August 11, 3114 BCE, more than 3,000 years before Maya civilization supposedly began. Why did they choose this specific date? What happened then that was so significant it became their year? Maya texts speak of this as the date when the gods created the current world, the fourth world in their cosmology, after destroying 3 previous versions. They predicted this fourth world would end on December 21, 2012, a date that sparked global anxiety but passed without apparent incident. The mathematical sophistication required for these calendars is extraordinary. The Maya independently developed the concept of zero-something that wouldn't appear in European mathematics for another 1,000 years. They used a vigesimal base 20 number system that allowed them to perform calculations with enormous numbers. Some Maya monuments record dates billions of years in the past or future, showing they were thinking about time on a truly cosmic scale. Recent discoveries have made the mystery even deeper. The San Bartolo murals discovered in 2001 show that Maya astronomical knowledge was already highly sophisticated by 250 BCE, much earlier than previously thought. The calendrical system appears fully formed with no evidence of gradual development. It's as if this complex knowledge appeared suddenly without the centuries of trial and error we'd expect to see. Different theories attempt to explain this impossible precision. Some researchers suggest the Maya inherited this knowledge from an earlier unknown civilization. Others propose that their shamanic practices involving psychoactive substances like psilocybin mushrooms and DMT-containing plants might have provided insights into cosmic cycles through altered states of consciousness. A few brave scholars have suggested that the Maya's claims of receiving this knowledge from the gods, specifically the feathered serpent Kukulkan, might be cultural memories of contact with an advanced civilization. The Maya calendar system reveals something profound about the nature of time and consciousness. Their calendars weren't just practical tools for agriculture and governance. They were sacred technologies for aligning human activity with cosmic cycles. The Maya believed that time itself was alive, that each day had its own personality and purpose, and that understanding these cycles was essential for maintaining harmony between Earth and cosmos. Modern physics has revealed that time is indeed far stranger than common sense suggests, that it's relative, flexible, and intimately connected to consciousness in ways we're only beginning to understand. Did the Maya, through their observations and rituals, discover truths about time that we're only now rediscovering through quantum mechanics and relativity? What happened on December 21st, 2012? Perhaps nothing visible to our ordinary perception. Or perhaps, as some researchers suggest, we crossed a threshold into a new era of consciousness, a shift too subtle to notice immediately but profound in its long-term implications. These examples of impossible ancient knowledge share disturbing commonalities. Each represents information that shouldn't have existed given the supposed technological limitations of the time. The Dogon's description of invisible stars, the Romans' sophisticated use of consciousness-altering substances, and the Mayas' precise astronomical calculations all suggest that ancient peoples had ways of acquiring knowledge that we've either forgotten or refused to acknowledge. The recurring theme across these mysteries is consciousness itself. Whether through ritual practices, altered states, or methods we don't yet understand, these civilizations seem to access information beyond the reach of their physical senses. This challenges our materialist assumption that knowledge can only be gained through direct observation and measurement. Perhaps most unsettling is the possibility that we've actually lost capabilities our ancestors possessed. In our rush toward technological progress, have we abandoned other ways of knowing? Are there entire dimensions of knowledge and experience that we've closed ourselves off from in our insistence that only scientifically measurable phenomena are real, supernatural phenomena? The Hoia Baciu Forest, Romania's Bermuda Triangle. There's a place in the heart of Transylvania where compasses spin wildly, where electronic devices fail without warning, where people enter for minutes and emerge hours later with no memory of the lost time. The locals call it Hoia Baciu, and after dark even the bravest shepherds take the long way around rather than risk cutting through its twisted paths. This isn't some remote wilderness. It's just outside Cluj-Napoca, Romania's second-largest city. Yet step inside its boundaries and you might as well be on another planet. The forest first gained international attention in 1968 when military technician Emil Barnea photographed what appeared to be a disc-shaped object hovering above the tree line. Barnea, who had no interest in UFOs and actually risked his career by coming forward in communist Romania, captured one of the most famous UFO photographs in history. The image shows a classic flying saucer, metallic and gleaming, suspended impossibly above the gnarled trees. Analysis has never been able to definitively prove it's a hoax, and Barnea never profited from it, going to his grave, insisting he simply photographed what he saw. But the UFO sightings are just the beginning of Hoia Baciu's mysteries. The forest seems to exist in a perpetual state of wrongness that affects everyone who enters. Visitors report intense feelings of anxiety, the sensation of being watched, sudden nausea, and unexplained burns or rashes appearing on their skin. Electronic equipment malfunctions with disturbing regularity. Fully charged phones die within minutes. Digital cameras capture orbs, faces, and figures that weren't visible to the naked eye. GPS devices give impossible readings showing locations miles away or coordinates that don't exist. The trees themselves tell a story of something deeply unnatural. In one clearing known as the Circle, nothing grows. Soil samples show no reason why vegetation won't take root there, yet for as long as anyone can remember, it's been a perfect circle of dead earth. The trees surrounding this clearing grow in impossible spirals, their trunks twisted into shapes that botanists can't explain. Some trees show evidence of charring as if exposed to intense heat, but only on one side and always facing the circle. Local legends speak of a shepherd who entered the forest with 200 sheep and was never seen again. Neither he nor his flock left any trace, no bones, no wool, no signs of struggle. Another story tells of a 5-year-old girl who vanished in the forest only to reappear 5 years later, wearing the same clothes which hadn't aged a day. She had no memory of where she'd been and insisted she'd only been gone for a few minutes. Modern investigators have documented even stranger phenomena. In 2012, a team of paranormal researchers recorded temperature variations of up to 20 degrees Celsius within spaces of a few feet with no apparent cause. They captured EVP recordings of voices speaking in languages that linguistic experts couldn't identify. Most disturbing were the photographs showing shadowy humanoid figures that seemed to move between frames of video, appearing in physically impossible positions, given the timestamp intervals. The scientific community has struggled to explain Hoya Baciu. Some geologists suggest that high levels of natural magnetism might cause the compass anomalies and some of the psychological effects. Others point to infrasound sound waves below human hearing that can cause feelings of dread and hallucinations. But these explanations fall apart when confronted with the full range of phenomena. How does magnetism explain the missing time? How does infrasound account for the physical burns or the photographic anomalies? Dr. Adrian Petrut, a chemistry professor at the local university, has conducted extensive studies in the forest. His findings only deepen the mystery. He's documented magnetic anomalies that fluctuate wildly without any apparent pattern. He's recorded gamma radiation spikes that appear and disappear randomly. Most intriguingly, he's found that some areas of the forest seem to affect the flow of time itself, with synchronized watches showing different times after being separated by just a few dozen yards. Different theories compete to explain Hoya Baciu. Some researchers suggest it's a portal, a place where the barrier between dimensions is thin. Others propose that it's a landing site for extraterrestrial visitors, pointing to the numerous UFO sightings and the forest's apparent technological disruptions. Local occultists believe it's a supernatural hotspot, where the ghosts of those who died violently in the area remain trapped. A few scientists have even suggested that Hoya Baciu might be experiencing quantum effects on a macro scale with parallel universes overlapping in this specific location. The forest's effect on human consciousness is perhaps its most unsettling aspect. Many visitors report experiencing visions or memories that aren't their own, seeing people from different time periods or having profound spiritual experiences that change their worldview. Some claim to have received messages or warnings about future events. Others describe encounters with beings that don't seem entirely human entities that communicate telepathically and vanish when approached. What makes Hoya Baciu truly terrifying is its consistency. This isn't a place where something strange happened once. It's a location where the impossible occurs regularly, documented by thousands of witnesses over decades. Whatever exists in that forest challenges our understanding of reality itself. Is Hoya Baciu evidence that our world contains permanent tears in the fabric of reality? Or is it something else entirely, a phenomenon so far beyond our current understanding that we can only describe its effects, not its nature? The oarfish, messengers from the deep. In the depths of the ocean, where sunlight fades to eternal darkness and pressure would crush most life forms, there exists a creature so mysterious, so rarely seen that many cultures consider its appearance a message from the gods themselves. The oarfish, stretching up to 36 feet long with a body like liquid silver and a crimson crown, has earned the title Messenger from the Sea God's Palace in Japanese folklore. And disturbingly, their prophecies tend to come true. The pattern is undeniable and chilling. In March 2011, dozens of oarfish began appearing along Japan's coastline, their serpentine bodies washing up on beaches or caught in fishing nets. Local elders immediately recognized the omen and warned of impending disaster. Scientists dismissed it as coincidence. Then on March 11th, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake triggered a tsunami that killed nearly 20,000 people and caused the Fukushima nuclear disaster. It was exactly what the folklore had predicted. This wasn't an isolated incident. Before the 2010 earthquakes in Chile and Haiti, oarfish appeared in unusual numbers. Prior to the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, fishermen in Thailand and Indonesia reported catching oarfish in shallow waters where they'd never been seen before. The pattern goes back centuries. Japanese historical records document oarfish sightings before major earthquakes in 1854, 1855, 1923, and 1946. Each time, the appearance of these deep-sea prophets preceded catastrophe by days or weeks. The oarfish normally lives at depths between 650 and 300 feet in the mesopelagic zone where darkness reigns eternal. They're the longest bony fish in the world, with bodies perfectly adapted to the crushing depths. Their skin contains guanine crystals that create an almost mirror-like surface, making them nearly invisible in their deep-sea habitat. They move through the water by undulating their dorsal fin while keeping their bodies straight, creating an otherworldly gliding motion that resembles flying more than swimming. But here's what makes the oarfish phenomenon truly mysterious. These creatures have no reason to surface unless something is terribly wrong. When they appear in shallow water or wash ashore, they're usually dying or already dead. The question that haunts marine biologists is what drives them up from the depths. What do they sense that our most sophisticated instruments cannot detect? Scientists have proposed various theories. The leading hypothesis suggests that oarfish might be sensitive to electromagnetic changes that occur before earthquakes. Tectonic stress can create electromagnetic fields, and many fish species have organs that detect electrical impulses. The oarfish's lateral line system, which runs the entire length of their enormous body, might act as a biological earthquake detector, sensing vibrations or electromagnetic pulses that precede major seismic events. Another theory proposes that underwater landslides or gas releases before earthquakes might disrupt the deep-sea environment, forcing oarfish to seek different depths. Some researchers suggest that changes in water temperature or chemical composition caused by pre-seismic activity might affect the oarfish's prey, causing them to follow their food sources to shallow water. But these scientific explanations don't fully account for the precision of oarfish predictions or their appearance before disasters that aren't seismic. Oarfish have been sighted before volcanic eruptions, severe storms, and even human-caused disasters. In 1969, oarfish appeared near California before a massive oil spill. In 2007, they surfaced near Indonesia, weeks before a plane crash that killed hundreds. It's as if these creatures sense not just geological disturbance, but disturbance in the fabric of fate itself. The mythology surrounding oarfish spans cultures and centuries. In Japan, they're called Ryugu no Tsukai, literally, messenger from the palace of the dragon god. Japanese folklore holds that the dragon god sends these creatures to warn humans of impending catastrophe. In the Philippines, they are known as the king of herrings and are believed to predict not just earthquakes, but the fall of governments. European sailors called them sea serpents and considered their appearance an omen of doom for whoever sighted them. Recent encounters have only deepened the mystery. In 2024, multiple oarfish appeared off the California coast within weeks of each other, causing concern among locals familiar with the folklore. Marine biologists studying these specimens found their internal organs in perfect condition, suggesting they hadn't died from disease or age. Something had driven them from their deep-sea home, but what the oarfish represents something profound about nature's interconnectedness. These creatures, living in a realm completely separated from our surface world, somehow sense catastrophes that will affect us. They serve as a reminder that Earth's systems are more intimately connected than we understand, that disturbances ripple through dimensions we can't perceive. Are oarfish simply sensitive to physical phenomena we haven't learned to measure, or do they possess some deeper awareness, an ability to sense the approach of chaos itself? Charleville, Castle's eternal child. In the heart of Ireland, where morning mist clings to ancient oak trees and the boundary between our world and the other seems gossamer thin, stands Charleville Castle. Built in 1798, this Gothic revival masterpiece has earned a reputation as one of the most haunted locations in Europe. But among all the spirits said to walk its halls, one stands out for the consistency of sightings and the profound effect she has on visitors: Harriet, the eternal 8-year-old girl, who died on the main staircase in 1861 and has never left. Harriet wasn't supposed to die that April morning. She was playing on the staircase, singing to herself, when she tried to slide down the banister. The fall was quick, the impact fatal. Her death was tragic but not unusual for the era. What is unusual is what happened after. Within days of her funeral, servants began reporting the sound of a child singing in empty rooms. Guests complained of being woken by a girl's laughter. The family tried to dismiss it as grief-induced imagination, but the phenomena persisted and intensified. What makes Harriet's haunting unique is the physical evidence that accompanies it. Visitors don't just hear or see her. They interact with a presence that seems conscious and responsive. Electromagnetic field detectors consistently spike in areas where she's been sighted. Temperature drops of up to 15 degrees Celsius occur without warning, often accompanied by the scent of lavender, Harriet's favorite flower. Most remarkably, motion sensors detect movement in patterns consistent with a small child running or skipping even when no one visible is present. Professional paranormal investigators have captured extraordinary evidence at Charleville. In 2014, a team recorded what appears to be a full-bodied apparition of a young girl in a blue Victorian dress descending the main staircase. The figure is translucent, but clearly defined with facial features matching historical descriptions of Harriet. The video has been analyzed by digital forensics experts who found no evidence of manipulation or natural explanations for the image. But Harriet isn't just a passive recording playing on loop. She demonstrates awareness and intelligence that challenges our understanding of what ghosts might be. Security guards report that she responds to their presence, sometimes following them on their rounds. She seems particularly drawn to children, with numerous accounts of young visitors describing playing with a girl that adults couldn't see. In one documented case, a 4-year-old boy spent an hour playing hide-and-seek with an invisible friend, accurately describing hiding spots in rooms he'd never entered before. The castle's current owner, Bridget Varden, has had numerous encounters with Harriet over the decades. She describes the spirit as mischievous, but not malevolent, a lonely child seeking attention and play. Varden has documented instances where Harriet has moved objects, turned lights on and off, and even seemed to warn of dangers. In 2003, Harriet's spirit allegedly woke Varden moments before a portion of ceiling collapsed in a room where she'd been sleeping. Scientific attempts to explain Harriet's presence have yielded fascinating but inconclusive results. Some researchers propose the stone tape theory, suggesting that traumatic events can somehow be recorded in the crystalline structure of stone and replayed under certain conditions. But this doesn't explain Harriet's apparent consciousness and ability to interact with the living. Others suggest that electromagnetic anomalies in the castle, possibly caused by underground water or mineral deposits, might create hallucinations or affect brain function in ways that produce consistent visions. Psychological explanations focus on the power of suggestion and the human tendency to see patterns where none exist. But these theories struggle to account for the physical evidence, the photographs. The temperature changes the EMF readings and the consistency of sightings across decades and thousands of witnesses who had no prior knowledge of the haunting. Perhaps most intriguingly, quantum physicists have begun exploring whether consciousness might survive bodily death in some form. If consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, as some theories suggest, rather than merely a product of brain chemistry, then phenomena like Harriet might represent a form of consciousness, persisting beyond physical death, anchored to a location by emotional trauma or attachment. Harriet's presence raises profound questions about the nature of death and consciousness. If she is what she appears to be, a conscious entity that has persisted for over 160 years, what does that mean for our understanding of mortality? Is she trapped, as traditional ghost lore suggests, or has she chosen to remain? Is she fully conscious, or just an echo of consciousness, replaying patterns without true awareness? Visitors to Charleville Castle continue to encounter Harriet. She remains most active around the anniversary of her death and during the Christmas season times when the castle would have been filled with joy during her brief life. Her laughter still echoes through empty hallways, her small footsteps still patter across floors, and sometimes, just Sometimes visitors photograph a small translucent girl in a blue dress, forever 8 years old, forever seeking someone to play with. What keeps Harriet at Charleville? Is it unfinished business, emotional attachment, or something about the nature of consciousness itself that we don't yet understand? These supernatural phenomena share characteristics that challenge our materialist worldview. Hoya Baciu Forest, the prophetic oarfish, and Charleville Castle's eternal child all represent consistent, documented anomalies that resist conventional explanation. They suggest that our reality contains layers or dimensions that we can sometimes perceive but don't understand. The recurring theme across these mysteries is the apparent intelligence or purposefulness behind the phenomena. These aren't random events, but patterns that suggest consciousness operating according to rules we haven't discovered. Whether it's a forest that seems to exist partially in another dimension, creatures that sense disasters before they occur, or a child spirit that interacts with the living, each case implies that consciousness and reality are far more complex than our current scientific models acknowledge. Perhaps most unsettling is the consistency of these phenomena. These aren't one-time events that can be dismissed as hallucinations or hoaxes, but ongoing mysteries that have been documented by thousands of witnesses over decades or centuries. They force us to consider that the supernatural might not be supernatural at all, but simply aspects of nature that we haven't yet learned to measure or understand. Horrifying discoveries. Wareham, Percy, the village of the mutilated dead. In the rolling hills of North Yorkshire, England, lies a place so disturbing that even hardened archaeologists were shaken by what they uncovered. Wareham, Percy, once a thriving medieval village, now stands empty except for a ruined church and the whisper of wind through abandoned foundations. But it's what lies beneath the soil that transforms this peaceful landscape into a testament to humanity's darkest fears. In 2017, researchers discovered a mass grave containing 137 bodies, each bearing marks of deliberate mutilation so extreme that it rewrites our understanding of medieval beliefs about death and the supernatural. The bones tell a horrifying story. Skulls were decapitated and placed far from their bodies. Arms and legs were severed with sharp blades, the cut marks showing deliberate, methodical dismemberment. Many bones showed evidence of burning, but not the kind that comes from cremation. These were selective burns applied to joints and extremities while flesh might have still been present. Some skulls had been crushed, others had knife marks suggesting that brains had been removed. This wasn't battlefield violence or execution. This was something far more disturbing, a community's systematic attempt to prevent their dead from returning. The discovery shocked the archaeological community because it provided the first physical evidence of a practice long dismissed as folklore, the deliberate mutilation of corpses to prevent revenancy. Medieval texts speak of revenants, the walking dead, who would return to spread disease, attack the living, and destroy communities. These weren't the zombies of modern fiction, but something more insidious, corpses animated by evil spirits or divine punishment, returning to exact vengeance or spread supernatural contagion. What makes Wareham, Percy unique is the scale and organization of the mutilations. This wasn't panic or isolated incidents, but a coordinated response to something the community genuinely believed threatened their survival. The bodies date from the 11th to 14th centuries, suggesting this practice continued for generations. Analysis shows that the dead included men, women, and children from all social classes, indicating that whatever fear drove this behavior affected the entire community equally. The historical context makes the discovery even more chilling. Medieval chronicles from across England describe outbreaks of the walking dead that correspond with periods of disease and social upheaval. The Abbot of Burton wrote in 1090 about corpses that issued from their graves and wandered about to the terror or destruction of the living. William of Newburgh documented multiple cases of revenancy in the 12th century, describing bodies that were intact despite being dead for months. that bled when cut and that only ceased their torment when burned or dismembered. Scientists studying the Warren Percy remains found evidence that many of the individuals had died during disease outbreaks, possibly plague or other epidemics. The pattern suggests a terrifying scenario. Disease strikes the village, people begin dying in unusual numbers, and the survivors, believing the dead are returning to spread further sickness, take desperate measures to keep them in their graves. The mutilations follow specific patterns mentioned in medieval texts. Decapitation, to prevent the corpse from rising, burning of joints, to immobilize the body, and removal of the heart or brain to destroy the animating force. But here's what makes this discovery truly unsettling. Some of the mutilations appear to have been performed very soon after death, possibly within hours. The cut marks on some bones show characteristics consistent with fresh bone being cut, not dried or decomposed remains. This suggests that the community was so terrified of revenancy that they didn't wait for signs of the dead rising but took preemptive action, possibly while families were still grieving. Different theories attempt to explain the Warren Percy mutilations. The conventional archaeological interpretation focuses on disease and superstition, suggesting that unusual decomposition processes during epidemics might have created corpses that appeared lifelike, or moved due to gas buildup, terrifying observers into believing the dead were returning. Others point to ergot poisoning from contaminated grain, which can cause hallucinations and mass hysteria, possibly leading people to see things that weren't there. But some researchers have noted disturbing patterns that don't fit these explanations. The mutilations are too consistent, too methodical, following protocols that suggest established procedures rather than panic. The fact that this practice continued for centuries implies that the community saw repeated confirmation of their beliefs, something that reinforced the need for these extreme measures, generation after generation. The abandonment of Warren Percy in the 16th century adds another layer of mystery. The village wasn't destroyed by war or plague, but was deliberately abandoned, with residents relocating to nearby settlements. Local legends speak of a curse of ground made unholy by the unquiet dead. Even today, locals avoid the ruins after dark, and stories persist of strange lights and sounds emanating from the abandoned church. What terror could drive an entire community to routinely mutilate their dead? What did they see or experience that made such extreme measures seem not just reasonable, but necessary for survival? The 600-year-old virus in clay jars. In 2021, archaeologists excavating an Iron Age burial site in Germany made a discovery that sent chills through the scientific community. Inside carefully sealed ceramic vessels, they found human blood organ tissues and something that shouldn't have survived 26 centuries, traces of Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever virus, one of the deadliest pathogens known to medicine, with mortality rates up to 40%, even with modern treatment. This wasn't just an archaeological find. It was a warning from the past about dangers that transcend time. The burial itself defied everything archaeologists expected from Iron Age Germanic tribes. Instead of the typical cremation or intact burial, they found a practice never before documented in European archaeology. The deceased, a man in his 30s, had been systematically drained of blood, his internal organs removed, and placed in separate ceramic vessels, each sealed with a mixture of beeswax and tree resin. The body itself was buried apart from these vessels in a separate pit lined with stones arranged in a pattern that suggested ritual significance. Analysis of the blood residue revealed the presence of CCHF viral RNA fragments preserved by the unique conditions inside the sealed vessels. The man had died from the hemorrhagic fever, his final days marked by the horrific symptoms that make this disease so feared, bleeding from every orifice, organ failure, and delirium. But what happened after his death reveals an understanding of contagion that shouldn't have existed in Iron Age Europe. The community's response to this death shows knowledge that seems impossible for the time period. They recognized that the blood and organs of the deceased posed a danger to the living. They developed a containment protocol that, while wrapped in ritual and religious meaning, effectively isolated the infectious materials. The ceramic vessels were specially made with walls twice as thick as normal pottery from the period, and the sealing method created an almost airtight environment that preserved the contents for millennia. But here's where the discovery becomes truly unsettling. This wasn't an isolated incident. Further excavation revealed similar vessels from different time periods, suggesting this practice continued for generations. The community had developed and maintained a protocol for dealing with hemorrhagic diseases, passing this knowledge down through centuries. They understood on some level that certain deaths were different, more dangerous, requiring special handling that went beyond normal funeral rites. The positioning of the burial adds another layer of mystery. The site was located far from the main settlement on a hill that later folklore designated as cursed or forbidden ground. Even in modern times before the excavation, locals avoided the area, though none could explain why beyond vague stories of it being bad ground where nothing grew properly. The oral tradition had preserved a warning for over 2 millennia, even after the specific reason was forgotten. Laboratory analysis of the preserved tissues revealed something even more disturbing. The virus showed genetic markers suggesting it had jumped from animals to humans, but with mutations that don't match any known CCHF strains. This raises the terrifying possibility that the Iron Age virus was either a now extinct variant or an ancestor of modern CCHF that was even more virulent. Some virologists have suggested that ancient human populations might have faced pandemic threats. We know nothing about diseases that killed so efficiently. They burned themselves out, leaving no trace except in rare preserved specimens like these. The ritual elements of the burial provide clues about how the ancient Germans understood disease. The stone arrangements match patterns associated with containing evil spirits in Germanic mythology. The separation of blood and organs into different vessels suggests they believed different parts of the body carried different aspects of the disease or curse. The use of specific herbs found in residue within the vessels corresponds to plants that modern science has confirmed have antiviral properties, though how Iron Age people would have known, this remains a mystery. Different theories attempt to explain this ancient knowledge. Some researchers suggest that through centuries of trial and error, prehistoric peoples developed empirical understanding of disease transmission without understanding the underlying mechanisms. Others propose that shamanic practices involving altered states of consciousness might have provided insights into the nature of disease that we're only now validating through science. A few have even suggested that this knowledge was passed down from an earlier, more advanced civilization that understood microbiology in ways we're only rediscovering. The discovery has immediate modern implications. As climate change thaws, permafrost, and humans encroach on previously uninhabited areas, we risk encountering ancient pathogens for which we have no immunity. The German burial site proves that deadly viruses can survive far longer than previously thought under the right conditions. It also shows that our ancestors faced biological threats potentially more severe than anything in recorded history. What other ancient pathogens lie dormant in burial sites around the world? What diseases did our ancestors face that we've forgotten existed? And most unnervingly, what knowledge about containing these threats did they possess that we've lost? The Nazi jungle fortress in Argentina, deep in the jungle near Argentina's border with Paraguay, where the Paraná River winds through dense tropical forest, archaeologists have uncovered a secret that was meant to stay buried forever. 3 stone buildings constructed with German precision and hidden by decades of vegetation stand as monuments to one of history's darkest chapters. This wasn't just another World War II ruin, but a carefully planned refuge for Nazi war criminals, complete with defensive positions, hidden storage areas, and artifacts that tell a chilling story of escape survival and the lengths to which evil will go to preserve itself. The discovery came in 2015 when researchers from the University of Buenos Aires, following local legends of a German hideout, used satellite imagery to identify unusual structures in the jungle. What they found exceeded their worst expectations. The buildings were constructed using techniques not common in South America, but standard in German military architecture. The walls, nearly 3 feet thick, were designed to withstand attack. Strategic positioning provided clear sight lines in all directions while remaining invisible from the river. This was a fortress built by people who expected pursuit and were prepared to fight. Inside the ruins, archaeologists found artifacts that confirmed the site's sinister purpose. German coins dated from the 1940s, including rare Nazi-era currency. Porcelain plates manufactured in Germany, marked with swastikas beneath later stamps attempting to hide them. Medicine bottles with German pharmaceutical labels. Most disturbing were personal items, a rusted Iron Cross fragments of an SS uniform and photographs, too damaged to identify, but showing men in Nazi uniforms in what appears to be the same jungle setting. The site's sophistication reveals extensive planning and resources. An underground bunker system connected the buildings, allowing movement without exposure. A sophisticated water collection and filtration system provided independence from local sources. Hidden caches, some still containing rusted weapons and ammunition, were strategically placed throughout the complex. This wasn't a temporary hideout, but a permanent refuge designed to shelter high-value targets for years, if necessary. Historical records support the site's authenticity. After Germany's defeat, thousands of Nazis fled to South America through ratlines escape routes facilitated by sympathizers and corrupt officials. Argentina, under Juan Perón, actively welcomed Nazi refugees, seeing them as valuable for their technical knowledge and anti-communist ideology. Documents declassified in 2020 revealed that the CIA tracked at least 9,000 Nazi war criminals to South America, with Argentina hosting the largest concentration. What makes this jungle fortress particularly chilling is its connection to the most wanted Nazi war criminals. The construction style and defensive features match specifications found in captured SS documents for emergency evacuation sites, prepared before Germany's fall. Local testimony collected carefully over years speaks of European men who lived in the jungle during the late 1940s and early 1950s, who spoke German, avoided nearby towns, and had indigenous people bring supplies in exchange for gold coins. One theory suggests this site was prepared for Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, who we now know hid in Argentina from 1950 until his capture by Mossad in 1960. The timeline fits the location matches areas where Eichmann was suspected to have hidden, and the level of preparation suggests someone of extreme importance. Other candidates include Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death, who lived in Argentina before fleeing to Paraguay and Brazil, or Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, whose fate remains disputed. The jungle setting adds another layer of horror. These men responsible for mechanized genocide in Europe's cities adapted to primitive conditions in South American wilderness rather than face justice. They learned to navigate jungle rivers, treat tropical diseases, and survive among venomous snakes and hostile wildlife. The same organizational skills that orchestrated mass murder were turned toward survival, showing a ruthless adaptability that let them evade justice for decades. Recent DNA analysis of hair samples found at the site has yielded partial profiles that don't match any known databases, but show European ancestry. Environmental DNA extracted from soil samples has revealed traces of non-native bacteria associated with European gut microbiomes from the 1940s era, supporting the theory that Europeans lived at the site for extended periods. The discovery has reignited debates about how many Nazis successfully escaped justice. Conservative estimates suggest at least 300 high-ranking war criminals reached South America, but the true number might be much higher. The jungle fortress proves that their escape wasn't improvised but carefully planned while the Third Reich still functioned. They prepared for defeat while publicly proclaiming inevitable victory, showing a cynical pragmatism that makes their crimes even more chilling. Local indigenous communities have oral histories about the pale demons who lived in the jungle, men who carried weapons and spoke in harsh tongues, who paid gold for silence and food, but killed those who came too close, uninvited. These stories, dismissed for decades as folklore, now appear to be cultural memories of encountering some of history's greatest criminals. The site raises uncomfortable questions about complicity and justice. How many people knew about these refugees and said nothing? How many officials were bribed to look the other way? How many war criminals lived out their lives in comfort while their victims' families mourned? The jungle fortress stands as a physical reminder that evil doesn't simply disappear when defeated. It adapts, hides, and waits. What other Nazi sites remain hidden in South America's vast wilderness? How many war criminals died peacefully in places like this, their crimes unpunished, and perhaps most disturbing, what happened to the children and grandchildren raised in these hidden communities, taught that their fathers and grandfathers were heroes rather than monsters? These horrifying discoveries share a common thread of human responses to extreme circumstances, whether supernatural terror, deadly disease, or the need to escape justice. Each reveals knowledge and capabilities that challenge our assumptions about what people in the past knew or were capable of. The mutilated dead of Warren Percy, the ancient virus containers, and the Nazi jungle fortress all demonstrate that humans have always been capable of extreme measures when faced with existential threats, real or imagined. Perhaps most disturbing is how these discoveries show that knowledge can be lost and rediscovered. The Iron Age. Germans knew something about disease containment that we're only now understanding. Medieval communities developed protocols for dealing with phenomena they believed threatened their survival. Nazi war criminals used advanced planning and resources to evade justice. Each case shows that human ingenuity can be turned toward dark purposes, and that the past holds horrors we're only beginning to uncover. These discoveries force us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and history. They remind us that civilization is fragile, that knowledge can be lost, and that the capacity for both extreme fear and extreme evil exists in every generation. They also serve as warnings about diseases we might unleash, about the lengths people will go to when afraid, and about how evil can hide in plain sight for decades. Interconnections and greater implications. As we step back from these individual mysteries and observe them as a constellation rather than isolated stars, disturbing patterns emerge that challenge our fundamental understanding of human history and consciousness itself. These aren't random anomalies scattered across time and geography. They're interconnected threads in a tapestry that suggests human civilization has always existed at the intersection of the known and unknowable, the material and the mystical, the remembered and the deliberately forgotten. Consider the recurring theme of lost knowledge that appears across every category we've explored. The Dogon knew about invisible stars that require advanced telescopes to detect. Iron Age Germans understood disease containment principles we've only recently rediscovered through microbiology. The Maya calculated astronomical cycles with precision that matches our computer-generated models. Ancient Romans used consciousness-altering substances with a sophistication that modern psychopharmacology is only beginning to appreciate. This isn't just parallel development or coincidence. It suggests that human consciousness has always had access to information through channels that our current scientific paradigm doesn't fully recognize or understand. The geographical distribution of these mysteries creates another pattern worth examining. Sacred sites, anomalous locations, and centers of ancient knowledge often align with geological features, fault lines, magnetic anomalies, underground water systems, or specific mineral deposits. Hoya Baciu Forest sits atop unusual magnetic fields. Dwarka was built where tectonic plates meet. The Maya cities aligned with astronomical phenomena, but also with underground cave systems. These correlations suggest our ancestors understood relationships between consciousness, geography, and cosmic forces that we've lost in our rush toward technological materialism. Time itself behaves strangely around these mysteries. Witnesses in Hoya Baciu experience missing time. The oarfish predict future disasters. Maya calendars track cycles spanning millions of years with impossible accuracy. Ghost phenomena like Harriet at Charleville Castle suggest consciousness persisting beyond linear time. Even the preservation of ancient viruses and the multi-generational practices at Warham Percy hint at time scales that transcend individual human experience. Perhaps these mysteries are teaching us that our perception of time as a linear progression is itself an illusion, that past, present, and future intersect in ways our current physics only hints at through quantum mechanics. The role of consciousness appears central to understanding these phenomena. Whether it's accessing astronomical knowledge through altered states, sensing impending disasters through mechanisms we can't measure, or preserving memories and experiences beyond physical death, consciousness seems to operate according to principles that transcend the boundaries of individual brains. Carl Jung's collective unconscious, dismissed by many as mystical speculation, gains credibility when we see the same symbols, the same knowledge, the same fears appearing independently across cultures that had no contact with each other. What's particularly striking is how modern technology keeps validating ancient claims we once dismissed as mythology. Satellite imagery reveals lost cities exactly where legends placed them. DNA analysis confirms ancient texts about population movements. Quantum physics describes a universe that sounds more like ancient mysticism than classical materialism. Each validation forces us to wonder what other myths are actually preserved observations of real phenomena. The response of established institutions to these mysteries reveals something important about human nature. There's a consistent pattern of denial, then grudging acceptance, then integration into existing paradigms, without acknowledging how fundamentally they challenge those paradigms. It's as if we have a collective amnesia, a psychological need to maintain the illusion that we understand reality even when confronted with evidence that we don't. Perhaps most unsettling is the implication that human civilization has risen and fallen multiple times, each iteration reaching heights of achievement before catastrophic collapse erased most traces of their existence. The garden cities of the Amazon Dwarka, beneath the waves the Mayas abandoned metropolises, they all suggest that our current civilization isn't the first to achieve complexity and sophistication. We might be rediscovering rather than discovering, remembering rather than learning for the first time. Sir, these mysteries also reveal that the boundary between the possible and impossible is far more fluid than we acknowledge. Every generation has its own definition of what's real, what's possible, what's worthy of serious study. Yet repeatedly, what one generation dismisses as superstition, the next validates through scientific investigation. The question becomes, what are we dismissing today that future generations will validate? What mysteries surround us right now that we can't see because our worldview doesn't include a category for them? The thread connecting all these mysteries might be that consciousness itself is the fundamental mystery. Not consciousness as an emergent property of complex brains, but consciousness as something more fundamental, something that connects all living things across space and time. Something that can access information through channels we haven't discovered how to measure. These mysteries might be windows into this deeper reality, glimpses of the true nature of existence that our ancestors understood intuitively, but we've forgotten in our obsession with material measurement. Here we stand at the edge of the known, having journeyed through mysteries that span continents and millennia. And what have we learned? Perhaps the most profound realization is not that we've solved these puzzles, but that we've barely begun to understand how much we don't know. Each mystery we've explored today, isn't just an isolated anomaly, but a crack in the facade of certainty, revealing vast depths of unknown reality beneath the surface of our everyday experience. The lost civilizations beneath the oceans and hidden in jungles remind us that human achievement isn't a simple upward trajectory, but a cycle of rising and falling, remembering and forgetting. Dwarka's gold beneath the waves, the garden cities swallowed by the Amazon, Percy Fawcett's City of Z. These aren't just archaeological curiosities. They're proof that entire worlds of human accomplishment can vanish so completely that they become myth only to be rediscovered and validated centuries or millennia later. If these civilizations could disappear from memory, what does that say about our own permanence? What will remain of our cities, our knowledge, our digital civilization? 1,000 years from now, the impossible knowledge possessed by ancient peoples forces us to reconsider the very nature of consciousness and information. The Dogon's understanding of invisible stars, the Romans' sophisticated use of consciousness-altering substances, the Mayas' precise astronomical calculations, these suggest that human consciousness has always had access to information through channels beyond our five senses. Whether through altered states meditation or methods we haven't yet rediscovered, our ancestors seem to tap into sources of knowledge that transcend physical observation. In our rush toward technological solutions, have we closed ourselves off from these other ways of knowing? The supernatural phenomena we've examined, from Romania's Hoya Baciu forest to Ireland's haunted castles to Japan's prophetic oarfish, challenge the boundaries between possible and impossible. These aren't scattered ghost stories, but consistent documented anomalies that suggest reality operates according to principles we haven't yet discovered. They hint at dimensions of existence that intersect with our own, at forms of consciousness that persist beyond physical death, at connections between all living things that transcend the limits of space and time. And the horrifying discoveries from medieval villages mutilating their dead to ancient viruses preserved in clay jars to Nazi fortresses hidden in South American jungles reveal the extremes of human behavior when faced with existential threats. They show us that our ancestors dealt with dangers we've forgotten existed, that knowledge crucial for survival can be lost and must be rediscovered, and that evil can hide successfully for generations when it has resources and determination. But perhaps the most important message from these mysteries is about the nature of reality itself. We live in an age that prides itself on scientific understanding, yet we can only account for 5% of the universe's mass and energy. We've mapped the human genome but can't explain consciousness. We've split the atom but can't explain why ancient monuments around the world share identical construction techniques. These mysteries remind us that reality is far stranger, far more complex, and far more wonderful than our current models suggest. The question that haunts us after exploring these mysteries is not whether they're real. The evidence is too consistent, too well documented, too validated by modern discoveries to dismiss. The question is what they mean for our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. Are we alone in cosmos that's mostly empty space and dead matter, or are we part of something far grander, a universe where consciousness is fundamental, where information transcends physical limits, where the boundary between life and death is more fluid than we imagine? These mysteries also carry a warning. They show us that knowledge can be lost, that civilizations can collapse, that what seems permanent can vanish in a generation. They remind us that our current understanding is provisional, that future generations may look back on our certainties the way we look back on those who believe the earth was flat. They challenge us to remain humble in the face of the unknown, curious about the impossible and open to realities that don't fit our current paradigms. As you go back to your daily life after this journey through the impossible, remember that you live in a world where fish predict earthquakes, where ancient tribes knew about invisible stars, where children's ghosts interact with the living, and where entire cities lie hidden beneath jungles and oceans. The mundane world you see is just the surface. Beneath it, around it, and through it flow currents of mystery, that connect all things in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. The next time you dismiss something as impossible, remember these stories. The next time you're certain about the nature of reality, recall that every generation has been equally certain and equally wrong. And the next time you feel that modern life has stripped the magic from the world, know that the mysteries haven't gone anywhere. They're still here waiting to be discovered, challenging us to expand our understanding of what's possible. If these mysteries have captivated you as much as they've captivated me, I want to hear about it. What mystery resonated with you most deeply? What experiences have you had that challenge? Conventional explanation. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because the world is far stranger than we've been told, and together we're going to keep exploring the impossible, one mystery at a time. Remember, the truth isn't just out there, it's right here, all around us, waiting for those brave enough to look beyond the veil of the ordinary. Until next time, keep questioning everything,